New York has had its share of larger-than-life metal bands, but Brooklyn's Type O Negative dominated the world. Type O Negative had music and personalities that people could gravitate easily towards. As haunting, heavy, and deep as they could be, they were always welcoming. Their music spoke to people, whether it be about some interpersonal thoughts, romantic feelings, or just wanting to strangle your ex. It was all stuff people could come back to. The only thing that was more giant than the music was frontman Peter Steele himself. That's not an exaggeration either. He was 6'8". You couldn't miss him if you saw him. But it wasn't just his size. He drew people in with his humor, emotional effect, and dark persona.
This is a rare exception that the food today was actually very good. I could identify the meat. As you see, very, very clean silverware. Perhaps only used once or twice, only today already.
He also had a major romantic effect on women. And later men, but that's another story. In interviews, he would say, "We write music for girls." But he was an artistic, complex guy who had to put his heart into music. About Type O's music, many bands influenced them, but the Beatles and Black Sabbath were the primary two. When you listen to their albums, you can spot specific moments or songs where either band crept into it. The heaviness and darkness of Black Sabbath would shine in songs like An Ode to Locksmiths, and the catchy melodies would pop in for We Were Electrocuted. This would earn Type O the nickname the Drab Four. There's misery, but think of it like some of the best comedians. Many of these comics are miserable bastards that use comedy as a coping mechanism. That's kind of how Type O is. They have this dark, vampirish thing going on, but watch some of their interviews and what they do off stage, and those guys were always having fun. Deliberate joke tracks are on some of the albums, and the booklets are often fun to read. Peter would like to acknowledge those few who have at least attempted to alleviate his misery. Functionless artists simply tolerated vandalism. We are the Vandals. Don't mistake lack of talent for genius. Yeah, they were always self-deprecating. Their albums had a definitive sound. Beginning in a time when bass wasn't always heard in metal, it was front and center on each album. They often covered unusual hits for a metal band to play, such as Summer Breeze by Seals and Crofts. The band also made a habit of including joke and soundscape tracks. All the albums were pretty lengthy, most of them being over the 70-minute mark, with the biggest number of tracks on an album being 15. Why? They felt since you were paying the same price for a CD with 10 songs as you would with 15 songs, they'd give you more songs in case there were some you didn't like. Type O's original songs were layered with different textures and atmospheres. You could hear doom metal, you could hear punk, you could hear thrash, you could hear psychedelic, or you could hear it all in the same song. Really, they're a band that did their own thing. They even had a signature, the Vinland flag. Basically, Pete designed this flag to represent his beliefs and his Scandinavian background. The short history is that Viking explorers visited North America around the year 1000. They would name the territory they discovered Vinland. With all of that out of the way, it's time to go through each era of Type O Negative. Before I get to Type O, I have to talk about the bands before it. In 1979, a heavy metal band Fallout was formed. The lineup would feature Pete Steele, John Campos, John Silver, and Agnostic Front's Louis Beto. Together, they released a limited 2-song 7-inch before breaking up in 1982. Josh and John would go on to hardcore band Original Sin, and Pete and Louis would move on to Carnivore. Carnivore was thrash and crossover metal with the members donning the image of thermonuclear warriors. Look at those crazy-ass outfits. There were 2 albums, the self-titled in 1985 and Retaliation in 1987. They were known for their badass live shows and their subject matter. Usually they'd sing about war, cannibalism, rape, race problems, and a post-apocalyptic world, featuring such delightful lyrics as, "If you can't eat it or fuck it, kill it." They were offensive to many, but fun as hell to others. After Carnivore broke up, Pete would team up with old bandmate Josh Silver on the keyboard, Sal Abrascato on drums, and Kenny Hickey on guitar. This new band was called Repulsion. But wait, there was already a Repulsion. They made a badass grindcore album called Horrified. So it was changed to Sub-Zero. Toaster! But guess what? There was another band called Sub-Zero. Eventually the name became Type O Negative. Slow, deep, and hard, the one that started it all. Many Type O tropes begin here. The humorous lyrical matter, joke tracks, in this case a minute of silence titled The Misinterpretation of Silence and Its Disastrous Consequences, the Benson Hoist Lesbian Choir singing backup vocals, and green everywhere. Seriously, there's green on the front and back artwork, on the CD itself, and in the liner notes. This is part of how Peter got his nickname, the Green Man, because he loved the color green. Sure, his work with the New York Parks Department also earned him the name, but every single album has green all over them. More on this topic later. It's worth pointing out that the artwork is a close-up of the old "and out, jacked from a porn magazine. This is on the same label that wouldn't let X-Order print the lyrics to Anal Lust. I guess you can say this is a real banger of an album. Many songs were changed up leftovers from the Carnivore era. This makes it the rawest typo album. Even with the thrash sections of Carnivore, it still delves into the goth, new wave, and doom sounds that would become dominant for the band. Slow Deep and Hard is best described as Carnivore a little grown up and a sloppy, juvenile typo negative. And what's the first song we hear? Unsuccessfully coping with the natural beauty of infidelity. Basically a hate song about Pete's ex-girlfriend who cheated on him. A scenario that was the inspiration for many of the songs here.
Hey, don't think I don't know what you're doing, you stupid twat!
No feelings are held back and nothing is metaphorical like on later albums. There's even an amusing lyric in Prelude to Agony about raping someone with a jackhammer. Total B-movie shit. Really, it's an album full of songs that flip-flop between styles, timings, tempos, and overall moods. The song Glass Walls of Limbo is dark ambient noise, chanting, and clanging, just to prove my point. Of course, there are other classics on here such as Zero Tolerance and Gravitational Constant. A fun and angry album, but the band was still young. Then there's this curious recording, The Origin of the Feces. Oh, you mean an asshole? Well, that would explain the original artwork then. Legend has it that Roadrunner wanted the band to record a live album. Why they insisted on this after just one studio album is a real head-scratcher. But the band blew the live recording budget on drugs and booze, so they said, shit, what are we gonna do? They went to a studio, re-recorded some old songs from Slow Deep and Hard with different arrangements, and then put crowd noise over it. Despite being fake, there's plenty of funny abuse between the band and the audience. It starts off with the crowd chanting, "You suck," over and over.
Yeah, you say we suck. We paid $15 to get in here. Who's the real asshole here?
They even reenacted an incident at one of their shows where they had to evacuate everybody because of a bomb threat.
Just got a call that there might be a bomb in the place. So instead of standing here looking at me, why don't you turn around and walk out the door?
In the last few seconds of Pain, Pete announces this.
It's gonna be our last song.
You would think if an audience hated a band that much, they'd just leave. But that's why it's hilarious. It's ironic, it's self-deprecating, it's what the band is good at. There's a new song, Are You Afraid, which didn't make Slow Deep and Hard. There's also a cover of Sabbath's Paranoid and Jimi Hendrix's Hey Joe, retitled as Hey Pete. Paranoid gets a total doom metal reimagining. The lyrics are the same, but that's really where it ends as far as comparing it to the original. But there is the Iron Man riff about 3 minutes in. As for the songs themselves, there's some length cut from some of them. For instance, Gravity isn't 9 minutes anymore. A few minutes into I Know You're Fucking Someone Else, they stop the song and briefly start singing something else. The sound quality is actually pretty good for a not live album. P.T. Barnum is one of the producers. Seriously, this is a total prank of a recording. How can you not love it? But none would be prepared for the storm that would be Bloody Kisses. The darkness, humor, songwriting, production, atmosphere, and even the artwork all hit on... Sorry, I can't keep that up. The darkness, humor, songwriting, production, atmosphere, and even the artwork all hit on what the band was about. Everything finally clicked. Future albums would show further progression in some or all of these areas, but this was the album that got them big. As opposed to the raw metal sound that was on Slow Deep and Hard, this showcased more of a doom metal slowdown. Of course, there were still some psychedelic, punk, and thrash moments here and there, but the emotion and slower tempos are what caused many to label this as goth metal. If you read between the lines though, the band is actually making tongue-in-cheek jabs at goth culture. One of the hit songs, Black No. 1, is about some ex-girlfriend of Pete's who was way too obsessed with herself, but loved the darkness. There's even a Seals and Crofts cover, Summer Breeze, so you can't take anything too seriously. Bloody Kisses is also the first Roadrunner album to get gold and later platinum status. Needless to say, it's a landmark. Going back to Pete's obsession with green, apparently he drove Roadrunner crazy with the artwork. They would show him lots of prints and variations of the same cover, all with different shades of green. He spent hours and hours on a mission to pick the perfect shade out of hundreds. Now about the album. It starts off with an intro, Machine Screw, then it goes into Christian Woman, a huge sounding lengthy anthem with a haunting atmosphere. It has it all. Synths, soft voices, acoustic guitars, and backing vocals that sound like a ghastly choir. Ultimately, it's about a Christian woman caught between her love to God and her sexual urges. Across upon her bedroom wall, from grace she will fall, an image burning in her mind and between her thighs. Black Number 1 is a big anthem for goths, and the irony is that the same ones the band is making fun of are the same ones that love it. Pete has the presence of Jim Morrison, and Josh's keyboard sounds like Ray Manzarek. It's the creepy doors. Really, it has one of my favorite choruses of any typo song. It has the harpsichord, some groovy chunkiness, and a cool music video. We Hate Everyone and Kill All the White People are spiritual follow-ups to Carnivore, but at this point, these thrash and punk outbursts sound more like Typo than they do Carnivore. The band truly hit their own mark on this album. Other fan favorites include Blood and Fire, Summer Breeze, and Bloody Kisses. A bit of trivia about the latter, it's an 11-minute song about Peter's cat dying. Of course it's all metaphorical, so he's not gonna sing, "Oh, my kitty is dead. He shall snuggle and meow no more." It was mostly recorded live together in a few days and then overdubbed afterwards, so the production values and chemistry between instruments is fantastic. The drummer, Sal Abrascato, left the band after the recording to join Life of Agony. Then the album sold a stupid amount of copies and the band got huge. Talk about worst mistake ever. Johnny Kelly would join as the drummer, Peter quit his job at the Parks Department, and Typo Negative hit the road. After touring a couple years for the album, Peter posed for Playgirl in 1995. Ultimately, it was a publicity move to boost the band and get more women. Little did he realize that only 23% of Playgirl's readers at the time were female, and a bunch of men started hitting on him. It's debatable whether this move was a hit or miss. The thing is, he was negative on a lot of things. The inches wasn't one of them. Readers wanted to feel the steel. People were walking up to him after the shows saying, "Hi, Peter, I want your Peter." Okay, I gotta get out of here. What the cunt is this fucking shit? I told him to stash that shit under the speaker, not in the speaker. Now I can't hear the goddamn music. I hate not being able to hear music when I drive. Get out of there!
Yeah, on? Hey, we hope you enjoyed our little joke there. This is Peter.
This is Johnny.
Kenny.
And Josh.
Just wanted to take a minute to thank you for picking up our latest recording.
Remember how I said that some of what made Bloody Kisses great was expanded upon in later albums? October Rust had more atmosphere and darker songs, but it strayed away from doing mostly doom metal stuff. They're more ballads, cues from classic rock and goth sounds, and less of the Carnivore type tracks. There are different types of breaks with soundscapes or chorusy, swirling, ethereal guitars. It's more melodic, dense, and hypnotic. Basically, the whole thing feels like a cold weather album. You know the kind. The kind where you listen to it on your walks, you see leafless trees and frost everywhere, then you come inside and listen to it in the comforting warmth of your fireplace. Part of this is because of the composition, another part is the production. It's more polished with a ton of reverb. This was also the first album where the band started using programmed drums as opposed to live acoustic drums. The drums would be like this for the next couple of albums up until Dead Again. Apparently, it was easier for them to play slower songs on time if the drums were programmed. And this is where I have to point out Josh Silver's underrated role in the band. Without him, the music wouldn't be as dimensional as it is. The way he plays the keyboards, the synthesizers, and the organs just adds something new. The band wouldn't sound the same without him. The bottom of the booklet says, "Kindly play at low sound pressure." Reading the booklets are almost as enjoyable as the albums themselves. Love You to Death is introduced with a piano. Then the band comes in and slowly crunches its way through Misery. It's a number about working hard to try and please a lover, and to be good enough. Not just physically. My Girlfriend's Girlfriend sounds like a modernized Doors song. I think that's what they had in mind too. Just look at the music video. It's hard to get this one out of your head. Another one that doesn't leave the subconscious is the Neil Young cover Cinnamon Girl. They sped it up, added hard guitars, and made it their own. Have some cinnamon coffee with it, if you will. Be My Druidess. Yeah, they wrote music for women, alright. For the most part, this song sounds like an alternative rock song. Think Jane's Addiction circa Ritual de lo Habitual. A couple of other dark classics include Green Man, Redwater, Christmas Morning, Wolf Moon, and Haunted. It's an amazing closer, you just gotta hear it. What the hell's the matter with the CD player? Stop skipping or I'm gonna skip you across the damn river. Oh. Another joke. Ooh, pizza! Alright. What the hell's happening to the world? Everything's green. Great. I guess since Typo has to have green on everything, it's gotta rub off on the rest of the world. Alright, maybe if I talk about this next album, it'll make it all go away. Pete had a hard time playing some of these songs live as they were pretty personal. A lot of his family members were dying at the time, so the despair in the music is genuine. In fact, most of the humor that was on all the other albums, aside from the first track, it's non-existent. I mean, this album is relentlessly dark. As a result, these are mostly dirge and slow tracks with the thrash, bass, and punk stuff all left behind. There are also less mythical songs about vampires, werewolves, and even less songs about women, and more songs about drug addiction, self-destruction, dead family members, and basically just giving up on life in general. Even the cover artwork's depressing to look at. World Coming Down is stripped down and less accessible. The softness and hooks of October Rust is pretty much gone, so there's more of a shoegazer vibe here. Not an album you want to find your happy place with. White Slavery is an 8-minute song about cocaine, has lyrics such as I lost myself again and I pray for death. I mean, it just throws you in the deep end immediately. There are 3 soundscape tracks, Sinus, Lung, and Liver. They're all playouts of possible death scenarios. The dynamic range is wide on these songs. Songs like Creepy Greenlight come in strong as hell after a minute. Then the title track shows a lot of despair with its quiet passages. Very emotional. Who Will Save the Sane is a bluesy jam about mental patients, and Everything Dies is a mellow haunter that's self-explanatory.
I still dream of Judge, though he died.
Please, keep the pills away from this guy! Of course, there's the obligatory Black Sabbath and Beatles worship towards the end. Paretta Blaze opens with a Black Sabbath-sounding heavy groove, but the chorus sounds a bit like the Beatles. Kenny seems to do a pretty good job with the riffs on this album. And finally, there's a Beatles medley. Day Tripper, If I Needed Someone, and I Want You. Typo seems like the kind of band where they can take any song and make it their own. I'm sure a covers album would have been welcomed by many. Wow, that was a mouthful. Now, whoever's in charge of this, can you please turn the world back? Thank you. After World Coming Down came out, they released a video called After Dark. You can tell this was made in the 1990s. Just look at the fashion and the music video styles. It's basically a collection of music videos with some backstage antics and interviews in between.
A typo negative with Mr. David Vincent. Now keep in mind, it is 8 o'clock in the morning here, and they're having beer for breakfast, of course beer for lunch, and beer for dinner.
The parts that stuck out for me were the onstage food fights with Pantera. There are 2 different videos for Christian Woman. I know Typo's songs are usually lengthy, but at the same time, it's also hard to get used to the radio edits of some of these songs. As for the video itself, it's a fun watch.
My beer. What are you walking away with my beer for? Give me my beer.
Next album was 2003's Life Is Killing Me. This is often seen as the return to form for the band. It has shorter, bouncier songs with a variety of styles and moods. fast songs are back, the humor is also back. There's a cover of Angry Inch from the musical Hedwig and the Angry Inch about a sex change gone awry. Another song, I Like Goyles, is a punky response to the men who were hitting on Pete after the Playgirl thing. This album is more focused, refined, and accessible, but it's not as dark as the previous couple of albums. There's more experimental and complex songwriting with a bit more pop influence, so it's not blistering all the time. Just listen to We Were Electrocute and the Beatles sound shines through. And the Benson Hoist Lesbian Choir returns once again. The album starts with a Black Sabbath sounding sludgy intro, but this is really a cover of music from the Munsters. I Don't Wanna Be Me follows that, and it's one of the more recognizable tracks. There are even songs about Pete's parents. Todd's Ship Gods is about a shipyard his father worked for. Nettie was about his mother. Common emotional songs like A Dish Best Served Coldly and Anastasia also exist. Gotta love the layering harpsichord and haunting vocal work with the latter song. If this is what life killing you must sound like, then death should be pretty nice. But I'll just settle for a walk in the cemetery. Or a movie. Their next release was simple. Having never released a live video, they put out their 1999 performance at the Bazaar Fest in Germany. It was broadcast on German TV back then, but it was bootlegged so much afterwards that the band put it on DVD in 2006. The performance itself is great. Everyone plays enthusiastically and with heart. On the DVD, they cut out a couple songs from the setlist, the Day Tripper medley and Back in the USSR. Just like on the After Dark DVD, we get to see the band behind the scenes. There's definitely no shortage of their sound guy Slitsy being an annoying pain in the ass to just about everyone whenever you see him.
So have a good day. I want to suck your balls, please. Suck your balls.
As for everyone else, they enjoy playing pranks on each other. A lot. I almost feel like I'm watching Jackass. The bonus CD includes a Santana medley, Evil Ways, Oye Como Va, and Black Magic Woman.
You got me running and hiding all over town. You got me sneaking and peeping and running you down. This can't go on.
Absolutely amazing. You know, all this talk about black magic and evil ways, it just makes me want to go for that cemetery walk even more. You know what? I think I'm gonna do that. In 2005, there was a hoax that Pierre had passed away. What actually happened was he spent time in rehab because of his drug habits, and on top of that, he spent time in jail for beating up his spouse's secret lover. His side of the story is that he accidentally punched him in the face. About 50 times. Pierre definitely wasn't dead, but in 2007, Typo Negative was dead again. Their relationship with Roadrunner was a rocky one, so this is the first and last studio album on a new label, SPV. On the front cover is Grigory Rasputin, a historical figure that Pete had admiration for. Why? He drank, womanized, got into fights, and avoided many assassination attempts. It reminded Peter of himself in a couple of ways. Something you'll notice about Dead Again is that this is the first time since Bloody Kisses that real live drums are used. Yeah, you can actually hear Johnny Kelly playing the drums on this album. This allows him to shine more, and it energizes the songs, even if they're slow. This album has more of a sound of the band jamming together. The drums and instruments aren't restrained. Any progressions or changes are more gradual and natural because of this. Everyone sounds like they're having a good time, even Kenny Hickey gets more vocal parts. Peter's personal life crept into the music once again. He was born Catholic, but then went back to it around this point in his life. So there were some religious undertones here and there in the music. After quitting drugs and dealing with the death of his mother, there are also lyrics about soul searching. As for the music itself, no new ground is broken. The execution is more refined and all the strong points from the earlier albums are on the table. It's more meat and potatoes songs with no bullshit interlude or joke tracks. Just 10 straight songs. And it's still the longest album they've ever done, clocking in at 78 minutes. God damn. There are no instant recognizable hits like Cinnamon Girl or even Christian Woman. It's just the band taking you through slow journeys. The Sabbath-influenced parts sound more like a heavy groove sound than the typical doom metal sound you would expect from Type O Negative. Of course, there's also Tripping a Blind Man, which tales him being institutionalized. Great harmonies and a memorable chorus. The Benson Hoist Lesbian Choir is on this album too. Wow, they worked with the band in the early days and they worked with them in the very end. In case you're wondering, the Benson Hoist Lesbian Choir was a fictional name Pete gave for the collective group of friends over the years that have done guest vocals on the albums. You just gotta admire the creativity. Josh's keyboards do fun stuff in songs like September Sun and Hail and Farewell to Britain. Pete also sings his heart out. We have the iconic screams in Prophet of Doom.
My soul's on fire. My soul's on fire.
And I have to mention the emotion in September Sun. There are fantastic lead guitar melodies and solos. These songs just take you in different places with their length. Halloween in Heaven is a badass rocker about the death of Dimebag Darrell. There's also female vocals, which is really cool. This was a badass way for Type O Negative to go out. The unfortunate part is that they had to go out. In April 2010, Peter Steele died of an aortic aneurysm at just 48 years old. Just before his death, he celebrated sobriety and was eager to start work on a new Type O Negative album. The tragic ending of Type O Negative wasn't even a question at that point. Johnny Kelly and Kenny Hickey would continue their side project, Seventh Void, and then eventually form Silvertomb. Members of Carnivore would reunite too, performing as Carnivore AD. Josh Silver would become an EMT. People would remember Pete as a gentle guy who loved his band and his fans. Furthermore, people would remember Type O Negative for making them laugh, making them cry, or just for being there. Now I would like to raise a green toast. To the Green Man, to his crazy band, and to the great music they left behind.